I've been seeing a lot of anger online directed at the older generations, especially the boomers. And some of the reasons for that are that most people nowadays, most young people, can't afford homes. A couple of years ago, the average home buyer was like 30, like around your 30s. And today, the average home buyer is like in your late 50s, which is, pretty crazy. If you look at like the wealth distribution, boomers make up, I think, like 10% of the population. They're like less than millennials today. They're less than like the other generations, but they own like 50% plus of all the property around today. So the younger generations they feel like they've been, cut out of the deal. And if you also like ask people about like anecdotally, like their experience with boomers, right? Like, there's like, I've heard like this story like tons of times where like a millennial is going through like some health crisis or they really need help. And the boomer, they listen, but they aren't really listening. And then, once the son is like done talking about his thing, the boomer dad starts like saying, oh yeah, then I bought a new Harley. I bought a new blah, blah, blah. He starts rattling on about his hobbies. And you could say, oh, that's anecdotal. But like, I've heard this so many times that I think it's, endemic of a culture that the boomers have. And, instead of just getting upset about it, instead of, just hating on boomers, I think we should really understand why they are the way they are. Because I think if we don't learn from this generation, our generations are going to repeat their mistakes, and we're going to leave a worse future for our children. So to understand them, you have to understand the West. In the West, there are two main cultures. There's Protestant individualism, sola scriptura, it's you alone. The only thing that matters is your own soul and your own salvation. You don't pray for the souls of the dead. You are alone, right? And then there's like a Catholic, mix between, collectivism and individualism. And boomers nowadays are very, very Protestant individualist, but with a weird twist. They don't have the Protestant part. Boomers were like the first generation to really, really, really start becoming atheist, and that kind of seeped through the culture, right? So all you're left with now, you don't have God. All you got now is just individualism, but like cranked up to like 10. On top of that, you have the other fun part of the climate the boomers grew up in, right? Their parents lived through the Great Depression, through World War II, through the Korean War, through some crazy, crazy times. So their parents wanted to make sure that the boomers didn't have to live through the hell that they lived through. So what did they do? They coddled them. They treated the boomers like, the greatest gift to humanity. And I think, this reaction to the horrors of the early 20th century led the boomer generation to be really, really coddled. Which is why, you look at it in all boomer fiction, right? They mythologize the Vietnam War. They mythologize all the things that they went through, right? It's like they see their childhoods, they see their life as like the creation myth of everything. When in reality, it's like the Vietnam War didn't really amount to much. Why don't we talk about the Korean War? Why are there no Korean War films? It's all the Vietnam War, because the boomers had it beaten into them that they were like the center of the world, right? Because I think the silent generation, the greatest generation, they wanted to protect their kids. The other part of this is the boomers had no cogsec, no cognitive security against television, right? They are the first generation to have, full mass media in your face 24/7 everywhere, right? You have a TV in every home, a radio in every home in the beginning, and then a TV in every home, transistor radios, right? So they were just bombarded with journalism, movies, and they didn't realize that, people who are peddling mass media, they have biases. They're not going to be telling you 100% of the truth. They have narratives they're trying to push. But boomers didn't know that because they never went through it. They never went through this. So what do? I think it just one-shots them. So what happened with the boomers? They got one-shotted by mass media. The culture that they grew up in, made them think of themselves as like the specialist generation in all of human history. And then they also have, an atheistic culture of like hyper individualism, which leads to the idea of the only thing that matters is me. The only thing that matters is, how I approach the world, right? Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which, I guess you can argue that makes sense, but the reality is human civilization, human communities are not atoms. They are not, communities of individuals. That's not successful. You are both an individual, but you are also part of a community. The people around you matter, and you have a responsibility to help them out as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's essentially what happened with the boomers. So, like, don't just like hate on boomers for no reason. You should understand, why they are the way they are. And this isn't everybody, right? We're just looking at this from a sociological perspective, right? Some, I assume, are good people. But like, there is a very definite culture. And I think we need to start being honest about, what this culture is. And at least have a dialogue,